Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we are going to learn about the topic of input-output from the computer programming course with the course code 6900. So what is input and output? Whenever we interact with computer, we have to give input so that the computer processes that input and gives us the relevant output. And in the programming, obviously to interact with computer we have to use programming, and within the programming we use different languages. And in C++, the language which we are learning, we have different methods of using input and output. So for the basic library that is used for input and output both in C++ is AIOU stream, as it is written over here. So there are two simple functions within this library which are used for two different purposes, cin and cout. We have also been going over and using them in previous lectures. However, in this lecture we will go over the input and output in slightly more detail. So if we have to get cin, what does that mean? Let's just explain that. So cin is console input and cout is console output. Okay. So cin, console input, is standard input from the keyboard when you enter from keyboard to the console or to the output screen. So you are using the output screen or the screen to input to the computer or the program. So that's the basic function of cin function, and that is why it is used. We will go over the basic way in which cin and couts are used. So cout similarly is used for outputting values. Okay. So if you have to use these specific inputs and outputs, what do? You have to include a header file. Header files are those files which have classes and libraries within them, and they give you code. To make your coding experience easier and to make your coding easier. Give you template code that can be used. What does it mean by template? Template means a reference which can be modified. With all of the rules of engagement, or with all of the rules of that particular directive involved. So we also use a namespace. We also include a namespace. You have in the previous programs we have seen this line using namespace std. So now I am going to explain it. It is you have to understand that whenever we do programming, we do not write all of the things in one file. We divide them into different files, and by files we combine those files in relevant with relevant functionality into classes, and then combine those classes, class 1 and class 2 of relevant functionality into namespaces. So namespaces are just nothing but just a combination of different classes for a certain purpose. So in the namespace we are using the standard input output library, and the basic syntax of using it is using the keyword extraordinary enough, using namespace std, and then just a semicolon. Okay. So here we have a very simple program which we have seen in the first lecture as well, wherein we have the AIOU stream header file. We have included it so that we can use cin and cout, and then we have using namespace for standard input and output, and then we have lastly the main function. In the main function we have used console out for outputting to the console screen, and then we are just returning a specific value within that function. Okay, simple input. We have another simple program in which we are outputting value and just taking an input from a user and then outputting that particular value. We would just go over it one more time again and again. Input output library, the standard input output namespace, the main function, and the main function is returning a 0. It is returning a 0 value. Okay. So we have declared a variable with the name of age. In this age, a person can give their age. And how do you give the age? You display a message on the console or the screen of or the monitor screen that enter your age. Whenever the person sees that particular message, they enter their age in the form of numbers, and then number is stored in the variable age. And if we have to represent it in the memory, then here the age will come, and for example, a person is 17, their age will be stored in the age variable, and then it is just going to output that particular age. So you can see the working of Cin and Cout, and obviously Cin can work with multiple different inputs, as we will see in different in other slides, upcoming slides. For example, here in this rather simple slide, we can see that we have declared two variables instead of one in one line. And we can do this. We can declare multiple variables within the same line in the C++ language and other languages as well. But obviously the difference between C++ and the other languages will be reflected in that particular syntax as well. So we have declared two ints in one line. Okay, and then we are just taking the input for those integers, taking input for those ints. That is it, and nothing fancy. And if and for example, if you had two characters, I would just go over the few examples to make it easier to understand. So if we had declared two characters, what would we write? We would write C in A and B. We just have to use the right angle brackets twice instead of one. If we had declared only one variable and we were using only one variable input, then we would have written this syntax. But because we are taking input for two variables, we are adding another and then using this. And here you can also understand and extend this process, that we can also take input for a array in this way as well, all elements of an array in this way as well, right? Okay, so we have another example wherein we have declared string name and double GPA. And double GPA is double because it is a decimal value. We can also use floats for it, but floats have less precision, so we use doubles. You can also use float in these rather simple programs. There would not be any difference between the two of those. So we have declared name and we have declared GPA. We are taking the input for, we are displaying a message on the screen saying that enter your name and GPA, and then we are just taking the values for those, and then we are lastly just displaying them on the screen. So here you can see that the type of the variable has no impact, does not impact, or should I say, does not impact the input output of the output of vars, and by vars here I mean variables. Okay, so getLine, there is a function on the line by which you can get a string, and usually when we say strings, and I have also taught the lecture on it, and I have said this, that strings may also mean one word, or it may also mean a complete sentence. So I'm just going to write the sentence which I have just said. It might also mean a complete sentence. So here you can see this is one word, and we can, this is actually two words or one word, we can just write the word. This can also be stored in a string, and this whole sentence can also be stored in the string, then there is no issue. However, these spaces will not be dealt with efficiently. So to deal with the spaces within a string efficiently, we, instead of using cin for simple cin for strings and for sentences, because in English language we call these sentences, for using simple cin for sentences, we use getLine for taking input for the sentences. So here is the usage example of that particular syntax. So we declare a full name to be a string, and then we use the getLine function, and in the within the getLine function we pass cin, and then the second argument is full name. So whatever we are going to write in full name, it is going coming from the console input, and then it will pass go through the getLine. So what does where do we use it? We use getLine when we need to read entire lines. For example, a person is writing a paragraph or something, and then we need to get first sentence or the second sentence or the third sentence, then we can use getLine. It is common with full name addresses. For example, if a person wants to write the address of their home, house 3973, this will not be this cannot be stored in just one string. So here we will use getLine to store the complete sentence or the complete address. Okay, so we can also format the output that we are trying to display on the screen. Formatting, what does formatting means? The simplest point of understanding, the simplest example to understand this point is, for example, you have a integer or a decimal with the values 7.36, and it goes on. It is an irregular fraction, so it goes on forever, right? Dot dot dot. So how do we decide first that how many decimal points are we going to take, and then how do we format that? That's the basic thing. How are you going to display the output? How? Formatting output means how, answering the how question. So for that, answering that how question, we use simple input output stream, header file, and then another header file, IO manip. What does that mean? It means input output manipulation. Manip is short for manipulation, so it is changing or it is using or editing. Manipulation means a lot of things. So we are manipulating by including this header file. We are trying to manipulate the output, how the output is displayed. So here we have just displayed a certain int fixed. It was declared. Okay, so it will just print that particular values, and then we set the precision. If the precision is set to be 2, then it will only go on to add only 2 decimal points within the output. For example, if we had this, then if we set the precision to 2, then all of the remaining numerical values will be truncated and only 3.14 will be printed, right? Okay, so for example, if we had a price and the precision of it was set to 4, then it will print 19.9999. Okay, and here you can see the explanation is also written over here, that set output to 2 digits after decimal point. So if we had a number like 70.39176 and we set the precision to be 3, what will happen? It will truncate all of the remaining letters, all of the remaining numbers, and then just only print the first 3 after obviously the first 3 after the decimal point. We have to include the decimal point, and the precision will be set after the decimal point. Okay, so here it is rather simple, but we can also see that if we declare different type of variables within different lines or within one line, we cannot declare different types of variables within one line. We can also only declare same type of variables within one line. So we have to declare these variables in different lines. If we declare different variables in different lines and then try to take their input in the same line, that it works. So what do you understand from this? Declaration or different variables does not work in same line, obviously. Different vars in same line of code. Let's just state that, or which is formally called statement as well. Statement does not work. However, if we take input for different vars is short for variables, different vars in one statement, that does work. Okay, so we can see that we have declared 3 variables, int a, float b, and character c, and then we can see that we have declared them in the same line, and we can take their input within the same line. That is just the explanation which is written over here. I will give you a couple of seconds to read these. Okay, So we are now moving on to the input formatting. In the input formatting, we just as we can format the output, we can also format the input. So by formatting input, I mean that what kind of values should be taken against a particular integer. So for example, if we are inputting age in age, but the compiler cannot physically stop you from entering a letter when a number is needed, but it can control the way that particular input is handled. So here we have a while loop. It is checking whether the correct format of input is being added. It is checking for correct input. While the person does not add a numerical value in the age, it gives you an error. It clears the input and then sets the invalid number. However, if you output, and this is also printed, however, whenever you add the correct input to, or whenever you enter the correct input to the age, what happens is that all of these values, the flag is cleared, the values are ignored except if the value has some \n attached to it, and then the value is stored in age. So hope you were able to understand that. Simply it means that it is checking for correct type of input. Okay, so lastly we do have to understand about the differences between input and output for structure and arrays. And structures and in arrays, what are structure? Let's just go over that. We have related variables of different types, related variables of same type. Homogeneous, they are all the same. They are heterogeneous and they are not same. The basic structure, declaration structure is like so for arrays and like this for structures. When we take the input for the structure, we can declare within the same line, and similarly we can declare the same line in the same line for arrays, but because arrays can be traversed with loops, so we can use loops with arrays, but we cannot use loops with structures. So that is one difference. Similarly, we can output the structure values in the same line, all of them, but we have to do it manually. No loops here, also no loops, but we can use loops for arrays. And if we have to access the value, we can just write structure variable name dot var name, and in the case of array, we just have to give the array name and then index. So what is basically it is used for? It is used for different properties of an entity or different variables in one variable. It is used for handling similar types of data efficiently. For example, the ages of students, for example, determining the criteria on which the students are to be passed when you have their marks in one column. Okay, so here we can see just the simple structure which has been declared and the way its input and output will be handled. And similarly, in the same case, we have an array which has been declared, and then how are we going to take the input for that particular array? For that array, we are initializing a loop from 0 to less than 3. It will go over 0, 1, 2. It will iterate over 3 indices, and then it will just take the input. And similarly, we will follow the same loop for output as well. That is it for input or output lecture 8 of your computer programming course. I hope that you were able to understand that. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.